Will Lamar Jackson return for the wildcard weekend matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals for the Baltimore Ravens? We dive into that, getting into a bit of the stuff behind the matchup and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, as always, Kevin Ostrecker of Ravens Wire, and we are here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here with us today, making us your first listen. We are free and available on all podcasting platforms, including over in video form on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times money on your entry. First-time users can receive an 100% deposit match up to $100 for promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Here with me today, it is our Taco Tuesday guest back at Spencer Schultz of Baltimore Beatdown. And Spencer, we get round 3. The Ravens 6 seed, the Bengals the 3 seed. They're going to be playing in Cincinnati in the wild card round. They just finished playing a game in Cincinnati in Week 18. Baltimore doesn't end up winning that one, 27-16. Their regular season record on the year 10-7. And I know a lot of the questions are surrounding Lamar Jackson, surrounding if this team can get back on track after losing their last 4 games. But in that Week 18 match with Spencer, I think I saw a few encouraging signs across the board, considering they didn't have Lamar Jackson. They rested guys like J.K. Dobbins, Mark Andrews, Kevin Zeitler, etc. I think I saw some positive moments in that one.
Definitely. The Ravens defensive front looks ready to absolutely compete in the run game with whatever the Bengals can put forth. I think that especially with the Bengals now sounding like they're going to be without their entire right side of their line that they imagined, the bodyguards that they brought in to protect Joe Burrow and right the wrongs of the last 2 years in La'el Collins and Alex Kappa. La'el Collins had suffered an ACL injury. He missed this one. And then now Kappa suffering an ankle foot type injury after being rolled up on in this one is not going to bode well for the Bengals run game, is not going to bode well for them feeling super confident in pass protection on that side as well. And that has an effect that ripples across the offensive line through the center, through the left guard, all the way through Jonah Williams. When you don't feel as confident, it limits the way that you feel like you can call plays. If you're Joe Burrow, it might impact your internal play clock or some of the other things that you have. So I think that the Ravens are ready to rock and roll up front. Defensively, in the back 7, the Bengals still – they spread the field out so much, and they do have so many capable bodies, including a guy like Trent Irwin, who did make one nice catch in this one that's come on as of late as a UDFA guy that they have that's caught a couple touchdowns and been a nice moving piece for them. Hayden Hurst as well in the mix a little bit in this one too. They're going to be able to create chunk plays. It's just a matter for the Ravens, it feels like, of preventing the long touchdown, the dagger plays, having multiple 40, 50, 60-yard plays. We do see Jamar Chase run a deep post and take the top off, runs right by Worley, and Marcus Williams and Worley recover because Justin Madubuike gets into Burrow's lap, prevent him from stepping into a deep throw. But that throw was there. That throw was absolutely there to be made. That should have been a touchdown. We also saw T. Higgins wide open in the end zone. Burrow puts one a little bit over his head. A little bit of panic out of Burrow on Sunday to some degree. And the Ravens are doing some nice things, but it feels like the Bengals have the ability to confuse the Ravens in trips. I think when Joe Burrow goes back through the tape on this game, he's going to see that he missed a lot of opportunities as a result of some communication errors on trips concepts, 3-man concepts, 4-man concepts that the Bengals were running. And then, Jamar Chase goes and does kind of dunk on Marlon Humphrey on one of those little back shoulder fades, one that he did get in the Ravens early season matchup in prime time. The Ravens end up winning, but in the drive, the go-ahead drive that the Bengals went down and scored on, Jamar Chase had his way with Marlon Humphrey a little bit. So it's going to be limiting those things. And it feels like the Ravens defense, for all of the parts they have, for all of the talent they have, for their scheme, for everything that they have, are going to have to hold the Bengals under 20 points if they want to win. 20 points might be the absolute limit that they can allow in this game. And getting to 20 points is, 2 touchdowns and a couple field goals, can't be 3 touchdowns. So with that in mind, I think that the Ravens do have the talent, do have the personnel, but another huge factor is keeping Joe Burrow. I think it's something the Ravens didn't do well, is keep Joe Burrow in the pocket, contain their rush, make sure that he isn't able to escape, reset his eyes, and forcing those defenders to cover for really long periods of time and eventually get open. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst, those guys are going to get open if they're given 4, 5, 6 seconds to continue play. And we saw that Sunday, and the Ravens need to be able to limit that, have a more contained rush, and let those big guys in the middle go to work to try to push the pocket.
Yeah, there were a couple of missed opportunities, especially early on in the game, to get Joe Burrow down. He escapes. He makes some things happen. And that's something that I think in the playoffs, again, you just can't have that. So I agree with you there, Spencer, but especially in terms of allowing less than 20 points, I think part of that it just depends on who's behind center for Baltimore and if Baltimore can put up points, because obviously we saw Anthony Brown in this one, Lamar Jackson not able to go, Tyler Huntley also the Ravens don't put out there. But I know there's a lot of speculation about, is this the week? Will Lamar Jackson return for the playoffs? And I know that, people want to see him coming out of that tunnel on Sunday and kind of like being the savior for this Ravens offense that has struggled and did struggle with him after the bye when he was in there for the most part. But Spencer, is this a week where you do see Lamar Jackson coming back? There have been plenty of reports varying. I know John Harbaugh still is declining to get into the specifics of it, but do you feel like this is the week where Lamar Jackson comes back and helps lead this Ravens offense?
Based on everything I've heard and seen and been told, it sounds like that this injury isn't something that heals or goes away in a period of time that'll happen in between now and the Super Bowl or during this season. In other words, it is a matter of comfort for Lamar Jackson playing. It is something where he probably needs to wear a brace, probably needs to feel that stability there from a brace. And if he doesn't, then it's not going to feel right. It's not going to feel the same. With that being said, it feels like there was no point for Lamar Jackson to play in week 17 or week 18. They lock up the playoffs. It felt like the Ravens were in control against some pretty bad teams, and they go get the job done against the Falcons in week 16. There was no reason to rush him back. They felt like they were going to be a playoff team. They weren't even in a week 18 clinching scenario. They weren't even in a week 17 clinching scenario. So the pressure for him to come back wasn't there. My best guess is that he plays. I mean, I don't really see how he misses this game after being in this kind of fluid situation of, well, he could play. I don't think there's a huge reason to, again, through the regular season as the Ravens were in control, but it's the playoffs, man. You only get so many of those opportunities, and you never know what one could be your last one, what one could be, the last time you make a run for a serious amount of time or get that ability. So he's an ultra competitive guy. We've seen him in the facility the last couple of weeks for sure, getting treatment, getting all of those things that he needs to get done, working out. All reports are that he's in really good spirits. So it sounds like he's going to play. I don't really know how he can watch his teammates go out there if he's able to play at all confidently. If he's not, then he's not. But if it feels like he's too competitive of a guy, and I think that people, want to bring the contract into it. And I think that we as fans or through the media lens or whatever you want to say, call it or come from, get into these, the contract and the story and the narrative. But at the end of the day, the guy probably wants to play football. He wants to play playoff football. It's about his legacy. If he can play, he's probably going to play. He didn't hold out this offseason. He's not doing some sort of holdout situation. Was he discouraged by his injury to play? Absolutely. But, the guy's going to play if he can play. It's not some deep, poetic mystery of what's going on. It feels like at this point, it's just if he's able to step on the field, move around, throw the football, feel confident in his body, in his knee, then he'll play. If he can't, then he won't.
Yeah, and he's talked about, he wants to be out there. He is super competitive, and I don't question his work ethic. He by all accounts is someone who is working hard to get back, and someone who I think will, again, yes, be out there if he is able to. But Spencer, if he's not able to be out there, if the Ravens have to trot out Tyler Huntley or even Anthony Brown in this playoff game on Wild Card Weekend, what's your percentage? What's the percentage of a Ravens win for you with Lamar Jackson and then without Lamar Jackson?
I think the Ravens have a good shot to win if they have Lamar Jackson on the football field. I think being able to make big-time throws and being able to see the field in a way that allows them to feel competitive and play from behind and operate in 2-minute drill or at the end of a game is huge. And I think that the Ravens do match up very well with the Bengals. The Ravens constructed themselves. Let's look at the AFC through the last 5 years. The Ben Roethlisberger Steelers were very good. They had Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, 2017, the Killer Bees, all of those things. Those deteriorate. The Browns, surge a little bit. I think they go 8-8 in 2018, 11-5 in 2019, one of those. I think 2019. The Bengals, bottom dwellers, they end up drafting Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. In that time, the Ravens ascend. They become the class of the AFC North. They have a unique, dynamic quarterback and run game. They put forth 6,600 yards or whatever it was, 6,300 yards over a 2-year period. They win 25 games in 2 seasons. 2019, 2020, they go to the playoffs. They go to the divisional round twice. All of those things. So the same way that we see the Bengals bring in Lou Anarumo and, the Browns go draft a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the Steelers, the way they construct their defense. We always hear analysts, you have to draft certain guys that can do certain things to play the Ravens. You need nose tackles that can command the A-gap, all of those things. Well, now the Bengals go out and have Joe Burrow, have Jamar Chase, have T. Higgins, have all of these guys' explosive offense. They have a very balanced, capable defense with a good run defense, all of those things. The Ravens responded this year by bringing in Mike McDonald over Wink Martindale, who was getting torched by the Bengals. They go get Marcus Williams. They go to more split safety, 2 high coverages with late rotations. They blitz less, but sim pressure, all of those kinds of things. They have faster players. Kyle Hamilton is playing a ton, a big slot body to be able to move athletically over the middle of the field. They go get Roquan Smith, all these middle of the field bodies so that they can help their DBs on the perimeter against Jamar Chase, against T. Higgins, against these guys that torched the Ravens last year. So long story short, a long-winded way of saying the Ravens have constructed themselves in the ideology of how do we compete with the Bengals for the next 5-10 years. So I think they're in a good juxtaposition to do so. I think we saw that in that 1917 win. I think we saw bits of that again on Sunday. But with that being said, you have to be able to put up 15, 20, 25 points to be able to win, to be able to, you're not going to completely put a lid on that offense. They are too good. They are too explosive. They're too smart and too capable. So if Tyler Huntley is the quarterback, we have not seen him make more than 4 or 5 plays, we'll call it, in a game this year, kind of winning plays. If that's all you get out of your quarterback, I don't think you can win in the playoffs unless your defense is perfect or you got a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown or a block kick that gets, taken back the other way, something of the sort. So I don't think that the Ravens stand a chance to win. Could they play strongly against the Bengals with Tyler Huntley? Could they limit that game? Could they limit possessions? Could they turn it into a ground and pound game and their defense stands on 10 fingers and toes and, you hope that it's a 16-point Bengals performance instead of a 20, 24-point Bengals performance? Sure. But I think in order to win this game, the Ravens need Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think a lot hinges on Lamar being able to play. And can they win with Tyler Huntley? Yes, but the percentage goes way, way down. Because, again, we haven't seen it from this offense where Huntley is a player where the offense isn't necessarily going to put up 30 points or put up 40 points. And I agree in the fact that you can't completely stop this Bengals offense with how good they are. So at the end of the day, you have to be able to combat a Bengals touchdown with your own touchdown, be able to score in the red zone and things of that nature. And I think Lamar helps you in that area. But coming up, we'll be talking a bit about the Ravens and what they could take away from that Week 18 game as they head into the wild card round. Talk a bit of controversy with potential dirty plays and more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. And now we're moving into fantasy basketball season where I am still undefeated, but all my stars are getting injured. I have Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Davis, and now Kevin Durant's injured. So hopefully my other players can hold down the fort for me while those guys get back. But if you want a different twist on fantasy, be sure to check out PrizePicks. PrizePicks has a ton of current entries you can use. They have a bunch of different games and formats, and it's super easy to play. And how it works is you pick 2 to 5 players, and they feel will go score more or less in their PrizePicks projection. You can win up to 10 times the amount in your entry. There's no competing against other people. It says Uber's projection available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, and more. Entries can be in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They have safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app. Go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. And this episode is brought to you by TurboTax. And go to TurboTax to meet with an expert who will actually do your taxes for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not your taxes. You can show your eyes things that are not taxes, unpack a moving box of not taxes, taste not taxes, sing not taxes a lullaby, hope not taxes, sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. Where TurboTax, an expert, will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can relax. It feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax. Visit TurboTax to learn more and do it TurboTax. Full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with Spencer Schultz still. And Spencer, there's been controversy. It has been great. These dirty plays. A lot of the Bengals players, first of all, there's an Athletic article that Bengals players were not happy with the way the Ravens played this game. At least some of them. Bengals fans are saying the Ravens played dirty in this one. I mean, did you see any dirty? I personally didn't. Did you see any dirty from this Ravens team in this game?
Not really. I mean, only the plays that come to question are, and again, it was DJ Reader commenting on it. I mean, the Ravens did hit Joe Burrow a couple of times. Broderick Washington got a big shot on Joe Burrow towards the red zone where Burrow threw a ball out of bounds. Tyler Linderbaum and Ben Powers a couple times did combo block DJ Reader and really get after him. Tyler Boyd on the sideline, a ball that Joe Burrow throws that causes him to completely expose himself, that's high and floating. Chuck Clark comes over and hits him in the ribs. I don't know what you want Chuck Clark to do. It's football. Push him out of bounds, I guess, but it's not as violent to dislodge a ball. He's making a play to make sure that he doesn't catch a football. T. Higgins catches a shot. Again, same thing. If you're kind of exposed and your midsection's exposed and they hit you in your midsection, that's playing football. So I didn't really see anything. I did try to go through with a fine-tooth comb. Offensively, I didn't see much. I mean, the Ravens like to run the football. They have Pat Ricard. Pat Ricard is a nuisance. He is going to block through the whistle. They have Tyler Linderbaum. That's an undersized, scrappy center. He's going to fight through the whistle. We, remember him putting Devin White on his rear end back against the Buccaneers, playing through the whistle. So to me, that's AFC North football. I don't see there has been dirty, shots in this division and in this rivalry. And the Bengals are not excluded from that with guys like Vontaze Burfict and some of their safeties over the years. But and especially, the old Steelers, Joey Porter, Ray Lewis used to hit guys, through their skeleton. So it's just a little bit tiring. The Bengals have really done nothing over the last week or so than complain about being slighted or complain that, the Ravens are hitting them too much or playing through the whistle. I don't know. It's not what I've noticed is a trend among teams that are successful in the postseason and successful and have the right mindset. They're kind of worried about things that they can't control and things that are outside of what they do. And for it to be a AFC North game against the Ravens, late, the Ravens bench starters, and there's no personal fouls in this game. There's nothing, that clear. Jackson Carman is the guy that's, riding Odafe Owe into the wasteland and playing through the whistle into the sideline and all of those things. And so for them to just really be so concerned about things that they can't control or things that, aren't impacting them or resulting in fines even or suspensions or penalties, it's just a little bit peculiar. It feels like they're trying to force themselves to feel like they have a chip on their shoulder. And usually those with a real chip on their shoulder don't talk about it much. So it's a lot of talk. It's a lot of, hype, I guess. It feels like a result of them trying to maybe fire themselves back up after, the DeMar Hamlin incident and maybe them feeling like, that it was a weird incident on the football field. And maybe, it's Zach Taylor trying to galvanize the locker room about something. I don't know. But at the end of the day, you always preach in football, control the controllables, worry about what you can do. And it feels like the Bengals aren't doing a lot of that over the last week or so.
Yeah, and I just don't think the Ravens are like a dirty organization. Like they're not going out there and saying, yeah, we need a competitive advantage by hurting guys intentionally or doing two of the plays, Spencer. I think Bengals, I guess Bengals Twitter is what I've seen on Twitter, are up in arms at. Both involve Roquan Smith, who, by the way, played with his hair on fire. And he was on a different level in this game, physical and whatnot. But the Jamar Chase bump after the breakup that Daryl Worley had, where he ran over and kind of bumped Jamar Chase on the way to celebrating. And then you have one where I think it was on the Higgins shot, and Roquan Smith jumped over T. Higgins to get to Daryl Worley. I mean, did you see anything there?
You get bumped by someone in the Sure.
Right.
You know, maybe it was a little bad intention. Maybe the Ravens were trying to go hit. Kyle Hamilton was uber physical in this game, had a big hit on Joe Mixon, a couple big hits overall, and was playing super physically. But it's AFC North football. There's no love lost. They're not buddy pow pow. They haven't been in the history of this division and these teams and all of those things. So the Bengals have every opportunity to go hit back, to go play, a physical football game or do as they please. But again, if there's no fines, there's no penalties, where are you to go look and feel like you're being slighted or feel like the Ravens are doing something that's unsportsmanlike?
Right. And I agree on the Higgins hit. I think it was just a really solid shot, like a really solid hit. Same thing with Chuck Clark. I don't think there was any bad intentions, but it's not like they hit the guy in the head or they were hitting and it was a late hit or something like that. It's just football. That is what football is. It is physical. The Ravens play a physical style of football overall. And I think that's what you get, especially in the playoffs. Like, I think that's only going to get the physicality is only going to go up from here. I think the Ravens are going to play even more physical next week, especially getting back some of their guys. And I know, Spencer, the Ravens, they did not have J.K. Dobbins, no Kevin Zeitler, Mark Andrews, Marcus Peters was not in as well. I mean, how much of a boost are those guys coming back next week?
Definitely would love to see them have a really clean sheet in terms of, again, when they're playing zone coverage, passing things off, understanding who has a flat versus a third versus middle third, things of that nature. So it needs to be a really smart game from those guys. Brandon Stevens has been up to the challenge athletically, had a really nice game against George Pickens, and I think had 2 pass breakups in the end zone against George Pickens. Feels like he's someone that can match physicality with a T. Higgins or perhaps with the Jamar Chase. I'm not sure that he can maybe match the kind of technique downfield against Chase, but I'm curious to see how the Ravens deploy him if they do. Marcus Peters obviously had an up and down season, has been playing, a scrappy form of football, but want to see him play a mental form of football that he's capable of. One of the smartest players in the NFL, and feel like he hasn't quite achieved since his injury, being able to feel in tune with what his mind knows and being able to get his body there. So would love to see him play that clean sheet. I hope the Ravens don't put him out to dry against, Jamar Chase in situations downfield. I don't know that he has the explosiveness coming off of that injury still and all of those technical savvy movements required to be able to keep with Jamar Chase downfield and some of those things. But I think that he's physical. He wants to win and usually is up to the primetime challenge. He's a guy that diagnoses things underneath so well. So I hope the Ravens kind of keep him underneath a little bit, ask their safeties to help out. And then you're going to have Marlon Humphrey on the other side regardless. Go play an A+ game if you want to beat the Bengals.
Yeah, and I know Stevens put on his Instagram a story that he's at the UC hospital right now. He was on the injury report with an illness, so hopefully he's all okay. And also the Ravens lose Gus Edwards in this one to a concussion. He's in the concussion protocol right now. Is there any concern for you, Spencer, if Gus Edwards misses this game that has a drastic impact on the offense? Or are you fine with them if Edwards has to miss this one, rolling out J.K. Dobbins, Kenyon Drake, and Justice Hill?
Well, you love to have everybody healthy, but with J.K. Dobbins getting the rest and with how hard he's been running, how explosive he's been running, it's not the end of the world if Edwards can't go, but the ability of Edwards to give you a change up with some of the zone runs that he can do and the way that he presses to the line of scrimmage and forces kind of second level defenders to get caught in the wash and then deviates outside without really setting up linemen to get holding calls or anything like that, more so using their leverage to his advantage is really a beautiful thing. We saw it in the first, I think, play from scrimmage for the Ravens. Gives a little quick jump cut and then hits the hole, and it kind of set up Jermaine Pratt to not be able to get to him when he did hit the hole. So I think it is a loss. You see the Ravens say, hey, we wish we got Gus Edwards the ball more against Pittsburgh. The play where he did get hit in the head looked like he got a forearm right kind of the head neck area, and he kind of laid back flat for a second. So hopefully he's not, feeling headaches or any of the ramifications of a concussion, and hopefully he is able to go. But it feels like, this is what J.K. Dobbins has wanted so badly. It's a shame that we end up hearing the story that he had so much scar tissue in his knee during the broadcast that the surgeon broke their tool while they were cleaning out the scar tissue. So you can still kind of see that his muscles aren't back up to snuff to be able to go be a true game breaker and rattle off those, 50-yard touchdowns or things of that nature. We've seen him do so many times before, but I think that he is ready to go. What does he always say? He wants 15 carries. He wants 20 carries. He wants 100 yards. He wants 200 yards. So There's going to be a heavy dosage of J.K. Dobbins, and hopefully the Ravens are able to figure out some creative ways to get the run game going and keep the Bengals from really teeing off on them on 3rd and long and things of that nature.
Yeah, Dobbins got his first career game of more than 15 carries against Pittsburgh. So if that trend continues, I think they can ride out J.K. Dobbins and have a complimentary Kenyon Drake in there and Justice Hill, both guys who I think have played well this year overall. But coming up in our last segment, we'll be diving into X factors for the Ravens in this game, some predictions, and more. So don't go anywhere. Still a lot to talk about here on the show. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. And BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball. They've got it all over at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head over to the website today using mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return. It's our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with Spencer Schultz still. And Spencer, is there anything that you saw in that Week 18 game that you think the Ravens can take away on film from what the Bengals did? And do you think the Bengals showed them 100% of their playbook? Or do you think they may be held back knowing or thinking that they could match up again next week?
I think the Bengals are not a team that is, I don't want to say not creative offensively. They are creative. They do, get Jamar Chase in the slot. They do work they're kind of classically creative in the way that they force conflict in zone coverage, things of that nature, and make sure that they get their playmakers the ball. But they're not kind of like the Browns or the Chiefs who are, running a ton of throwbacks and trick plays and things of that nature at the same time. So I think were the Bengals really pressed? Maybe they weren't bringing out their, top shelf stuff, their reserve bottles, but we saw what the Bengals are. They like to spread the field out. They like to force that conflict I described, and they like to be able to run the ball. I don't know if we saw them really trying to run the ball at will or get into their heavy packages or, how they plan on doing so, which they will ultimately have to do at some point. But I think the Bengals kind of are what they are offensively. Joe Burrow, had opportunities to make this a 40-point outing for the Bengals. He misses Jamar Chase. He misses T. Higgins. He misses a couple other throws. Wasn't quite in it. So I don't know what they, maybe they have a flea flicker, maybe they have a reverse, something of the sort. But, I'm sure they weren't totally exposing the entirety of their game plan. But at the same time, the Bengals did have to win that game. They did really want to win that game. They did really want the 2 seed. They spent the entire week complaining about the 2 seed. So I don't know that they kind of were super concerned about, maybe holding back necessarily. But again, I don't know what there is to hold back. It's kind of spread you out, give you certain looks, certain plays, and Joe Burrow making reads like a smart quarterback. So on that side of the ball, I'm not sure. Then again, on the defensive side of the ball, if Lamar Jackson plays, it's completely different. And there's nothing that you could have held back because it's just a different football game if Lamar Jackson is playing. So I'm not sure that applies necessarily. And then conversely for the Ravens, what do you see out of them? I saw Sammy Watkins go be really physical with Bengals cornerbacks downfield, generate separation 2 times. It generates 2 explosive pass plays. Saw Isaiah Likely really working the middle of the field. I am not terribly impressed with the Bengals cornerbacks. They are without their top cornerback, their number 1 guy, Chidobe Awuzie, who has been out for quite some time. I think that the Ravens, that you have to be able to have explosive plays downfield in the pass game. You need to be able to take advantage of a wide receiver. There was an instance where Isaiah Likely flashes over the middle of the field. It's a 3-man route concept. Tylan Wallace is lined up. It's a middle of the field close. Looks like a cover 1, cover 3 kind of coverage. And you've got Tylan Wallace with inside leverage running kind of stutter and go inside. He leaves a cornerback completely toasted. And, Anthony Brown is making his first start as a UDFA guy that turned the football over a ton at Oregon. But there was nothing that told you pre-snap or post-snap that you should throw that ball to Isaiah Likely. Everything that told you should have gone elsewhere. Tylan Wallace is streaking downfield with 10 yards of separation, just past the read of Isaiah Likely. Doesn't see him. At some point, you have to be able to make defenses respect your wide receivers, make them respect what you can do over top. And that's why the Ravens need Lamar Jackson back. But at the same time, those receivers have to go make plays. DeMarcus Robinson had a couple nice catches in this one, but when he has been a playmaker for them, they have won football games. When he goes up and dunks over top of a Falcons receiver, they beat the Falcons. They look normal and functional at times. His hand positioning gets off. Feels like he can get a little excited and a little bit inconsistent because of excitement and things of that nature. So need him to have a big game for the Ravens. And I just think you need to attack those cornerbacks. I think that's a big takeaway. And whether that's lining Isaiah Likely up, split out, alone, kind of isolated. They did have a back in the backfield, but we saw him run a shake route against a corner. I think Trey Flowers completely left him, goes and gets a first down. Mark Andrews is going to be rested and fresh. Andrews looked like his normal self against the Falcons and against the Steelers and was dynamic and explosive and sudden and looked strong. So looking for him to be able to go beat up on those corners as well, especially Trey Flowers, especially Eli Apple. So, go attack those corners, make them come up and play, make them respect downfield, and I think you can win this football game if you have Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think you can also. And I know it can't, if Lamar comes back, it just can't be Lamar only, and that's your entire team. So who are a couple of underrated players, Spencer, for the Ravens in this one, do you think have to step up big for Baltimore to pull this out?
Underrated player in this one, I think, is going to be just any Ravens receiver, aside from Mark Andrews. If someone can have a 4-catch, 85-yard performance or make one explosive game-changing play, then the Ravens have a shot to win this one. On the defensive side of the football, I'm looking at Justin Houston, Odafe Owe, at the Ravens outside linebacker group. David Ajabo, has a sack in this one. I'm not sure. I would imagine we see him 5-10 snaps. I'm sure after him hitting an inside counter and then getting a strip sack, they might let him rush the passer a little bit. Jason Pierre-Paul, to me, has not done a good job containing over the last couple of weeks. He's been really great against the run this year. He's been disruptive in senses. Would maybe like to see him kicked inside a little bit more and let Houston and Bowser and Owe and Ajabo go to work on the outside, and they need to contain Joe Burrow. If you let Joe Burrow create, he is going to hurt you. He is going to extend drives. He's going to find explosive plays. He's going to get into a rhythm, and you are going to lose this football game. So I'm looking at that Ravens outside linebacker group, and then up the spine. I mean, Marcus Williams, Roquan Smith, they brought you in to be a playmaker. They brought you in to make an impact play, to take a football away. Go take a football away. Marcus Williams was, maybe going to lead the NFL in interceptions if he didn't dislocate his wrist, unfortunately. They did end up kind of matching him up in man coverage at times and doing some unique things with him last week. So maybe that was a little bit of baiting the Bengals in some situations, but they need someone to make a play, create a turnover between those outside linebackers and those safeties. And then again, I guess the kind of overrated player, not overrated, but obvious player is Marlon Humphrey. He has to have a day. He needs to have a signature game that is remembered in his legacy of his career for the Ravens to win.
Yeah, and I know for Humphrey, he's somebody who hopefully he can eliminate one of those Bengals receivers in terms of just taking them out of the game, just like making them invisible. That's what I'm trying to say. Make that player invisible. Maybe there's a fruit punch out here or there, but if he's able to one-on-one take out a Jamar Chase from making an impact or make a T. Higgins invisible on the day, I think that's a win for you. And then obviously you got to trust your other guys to go out there and do the same thing. But if he's winning his reps, hopefully the other guys are winning their reps too. So hopefully Marlon Humphrey can have a big game for sure. But Spencer, you said that if the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, you think they can win this game. So is your prediction that Baltimore goes out and they win this one?
If we see Lamar Jackson, I'm going to go with the Ravens win. I think that, again, they've built themselves. They have constructed their defensive philosophies. They've constructed their roster. They have imagined this game coming. And this game could have been last week being for the division, for the Ravens to make the playoffs, for the 1 seed, for whatever. Last week, very easily, a couple bounces throughout the season, could have made that game for much higher leverage. And ultimately didn't, but they are prepared for the Bengals. They out-physicaled the Bengals on Sunday. They can generate returns on the Bengals, things of that nature. I think that with Lamar Jackson, and again, I'm not terribly impressed with what I've seen from the Bengals corners on the perimeter. I think they can make, from there, if Lamar Jackson's in the game, he's going to make 5, 6, 7, 8 plays, as opposed to a Tyler Huntley making 3, 4, 5, hoping for that kind of 5th or 6th play that can be a second touchdown or be an explosive pass that gets you into scoring range or, a long run, whatever it is. So I think if Lamar Jackson plays, the Ravens win. And again, if Lamar Jackson does not play, I don't think the Ravens have a chance to win, but I think they keep it close.
Yeah, Lamar's a huge X factor here, so hopefully we'll get some positive updates over the course of the week, returning to practice, getting some reps in and the like. But I do think, again, we saw some positive things in that Cincinnati Week 18 loss. Even though they did lose, I think they were able to stifle the Bengals offense a little bit. And also the defense wasn't put in necessarily great positions by the offense for some of this game, where the interceptions and the turnovers, and obviously the Bengals defense scored a touchdown there. So I think, again, I agree, Spencer, if you can hold the Bengals to under 20 points and you have Lamar Jackson, I think you have a pretty good shot to win this one if you're the Ravens. So that's all I have for you here today. Thank you so much for hopping on again, Spencer. Hopefully next week we're talking about a Ravens win and they moving on the divisional round. But please tell people where they can find you and what you have going on.
You can find me on Twitter at Ravens4Dummies. You can find my work at BaltimoreBeatdown.com. You can find the Baltimore Beatdown podcast anywhere you get your podcast, the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. Thank you so much. Hopefully we are talking about a win. It's the playoffs. I'm excited. This is the exciting time of the year. If you're a Ravens fan, have been spoiled, whether you believe it or not, your entire existence. The Ravens are consummately in the playoffs, always in the playoffs. This is when the season begins. It also could be when the season ends in this case, with a little bit of a beat-up team, but there's no point in not enjoying the fruit of a playoff berth and a wild card game against a divisional opponent. This is what being a fan is all about. So go have some fun. We'll be having some fun all week, and then we'll be getting into the offseason whenever that gets here, or into another matchup if the Ravens are able to pull off a pretty decent upset as they're 6.5-point underdogs.
A big shout out to Spencer as always. The links will be in the description to his work below, so be sure to check him out. He's in a lot of places, does a lot of great work in a lot of places. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, we are a daily Ravens podcast, so be sure to like this video, subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. 5 days a week, we bring you Ravens content Monday through Friday, so any Ravens news, analysis, updates, we do have you covered. So I hope you'll come along for the ride with me, enjoying the Locked On Ravens family. And again, I am working on hopefully doing the first ever live Locked On Ravens show immediately following or very soon after the Ravens game against the Bengals. So we do it after that game, whether the Ravens win or they lose. So again, we can celebrate or mourn together. So I'm trying to get that all together, but I'm excited about it. So hopefully we can make that happen. But again, thank you so much for joining me here today. When we get back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens, we'll be diving into more Ravens content, of course. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow.